The house is quiet now. Whatever the day carried, it is done. The weight of it is still somewhere in the room with you, the way the smell of rain stays after the rain has stopped. But the day itself is behind you. Outside, the night has settled. The sounds of things moving have thinned to almost nothing. Your breathing is the loudest thing left. Somewhere, 2,000 years ago, a messenger was walking a road that made a circle through 7 cities. He carried 7 scrolls, each one addressed, each one sealed. Tonight, without any plan on your part, that road has come to your door. You do not need to stay awake for this. Just let the words find whatever it is in you they were written for. The lamp is lit. The first letter is open. Let us begin. Chapter 1. The road that made a circle. Picture a man walking, not a soldier, not a scholar, a messenger with a leather satchel over one shoulder and 7 scrolls inside it, each sealed, each with a city's name pressed into the wax. He arrives by ship at Ephesus. The harbor smells of salt and cedar and fish left too long in the sun. He makes his way through the marble streets, past the shadow of the temple columns that are still catching the last of the afternoon light, and finds the house where the community gathers. A woman answers the door. He hands her the scroll. She holds it with both hands and does not speak. He is back on the road before the lamp inside her window has fully brightened the street. From Ephesus, he walks north along the coast towards Smyrna, 35 miles with the sea appearing and disappearing through the scrub on clear mornings. His sandals wear against the same stones the whole way. He sleeps one night under a fig tree near the coast, his satchel tucked under his head, listening to the water below the cliff. From Smyrna, he goes north to Pergamum, sitting high on its hill. Then inland and southeast to Thyatira, a flat valley town smelling of dye and copper and cooking fires. Then to Sardis, sitting on its famous height. Then to Philadelphia, smaller and quieter, and still carrying the marks of the earthquake in some of its leaning walls. Then south and west to Laodicea, a loop, a circuit, the postal road of the ancient Roman province of Asia. If you trace those 7 cities on a map today, the shape they make is unmistakable, not scattered at random. They follow the natural route a courier would travel to deliver mail through that region in the 1st century, stopping at each door in the order the road provides. This matters. I want to tell you why before we open the first letter, because the road changes the way you hear what was carried on it. The 7 cities were not equal. Ephesus was one of the grandest cities in the Eastern Roman Empire. Sardis had been the legendary capital of the kingdom of Lydia, the city of Croesus, whose wealth became a permanent measure of human riches. These were places of history and renown. But Thyatira was a working town with flat streets and dyers whose hands were always stained. Philadelphia was small, in a valley that did not hold still. Laodicea was prosperous but not celebrated, the kind of places most people pass through rather than stop in. And the same messenger stopped at every door. The same care went into each scroll. The same voice spoke into each city. Somewhere in Colossae, a community gathered that night and received no letter. History moved through Ephesus instead. The circuit was not organized by the importance of the destination. It was organized by the road, and the road went everywhere. I think about that when the night is long and the particular place I occupy in the world feels small. Now let me say something honest about the number 7, because it is worth more than a quick acknowledgement. We know from other sources that more than 7 Christian communities existed in this region at the time. Colossae had a church. There were believers in other towns along the same coastline. They were real. So why these 7? My own reading of the evidence leads me here. In the biblical tradition, 7 is the number of completeness of a full cycle. The use of 7 churches most likely signals that these letters, taken together, represent something broader than 7 specific congregations. They cover many of the enduring conditions a community of faith moves through across time. A church that has its doctrine exactly right, but has lost the warmth from which the doctrine was supposed to grow. A church being destroyed from outside that is somehow more alive than the comfortable ones. A church holding firm in public while allowing quiet erosion in private. A church doing more good than ever while tolerating a voice that slowly redefines what good is allowed to mean. A church with an admired reputation and a hollow interior. A church with almost nothing the world would count and a door that nothing can close. A church so comfortable it cannot feel its own emptiness. If you have paid attention to your own interior life over many years, you will recognize most of those conditions. You may have lived inside several of them yourself, in different seasons. That recognition is where these letters begin to do their work. Let the road settle into your mind. The messenger is moving. His sandals are worn at the heel. The first door is just ahead, and there is still light in the window. Chapter 2. Ephesus, the church that kept everything and misplaced the one thing. She has been coming to this gathering for more than 20 years. The room is small and smells of lamp oil and old wool. She knows every face. She knows which elder speaks too quickly and which one actually listens. She knows where the crack runs in the wall behind the speaker and that it was not there 10 years ago. She knows the names of the children who have grown up in this room since they were small enough to sleep on a blanket in the corner. She sits in the back. She always has. This morning the lamp in the corner is burning low, the way it does when someone forgot to fill it the night before. A small thing, but she noticed it the moment she came in, and she has been noticing it since. A low flame giving less light than it should, casting a shadow where there should not be one. She does not know why the image bothers her so much. The gathering continues. The words are familiar. She has heard these words hundreds of times, and she believes them. She has always believed them. She has never stopped believing them. But something sits at the edge of her awareness this morning like a word she cannot quite remember. A quality of the room that is different from how it once was, though she cannot point to a single thing that has changed. She sets it aside. The gathering ends. People rise and greet one another and make arrangements for the week. She stays in her seat a little longer than most. Outside, the city of Ephesus is already loud. The temple of Artemis, visible from most of the streets near the harbor, catches the morning light on its columns. The whole city moves around that building the way water moves around a stone. The incense from its precincts drifts through the lower streets on still mornings. Pilgrims have come to see it from across the empire. Merchants have come to sell things to the pilgrims. Into this city, 40 years before the letter arrives, the Apostle Paul came and stayed for 2 years and 3 months, teaching daily in a lecture hall. After Paul, Timothy served the community here. The tradition of the early church holds that John himself, the man who would eventually write the letters we are reading tonight, settled in Ephesus in his later years. If that tradition is accurate, and most early church historians treat it as reliable, then this community was shaped by the actual hands of people who had walked with Jesus. This was not a congregation of second-hand believers, and the letter knows it. The letter opens with what the community has done well, and the list is long and real. Toil, patient endurance, the ability to identify false teachers and turn them away. 40 years of that, in a city organized around the worship of Artemis. These are not small achievements. And then the sentence that will name what the woman in the back row has been feeling without being able to say it. But I have this against you, that you have abandoned the love you had at first. She hears the letter read aloud a few months later. And when the reader gets to that sentence, something in her very quietly stops. Not in shame, in recognition. The Greek word for love here is agape. Not affection, not admiration, but the self-giving, outward-moving love that the New Testament writers consistently use to describe the quality of God's own love and the quality that a life touched by God was supposed to begin generating. And the word for first is protos. Original, the love that was there at the beginning, before the years accumulated. What Jesus is naming is not a failure of belief. The community still believed everything it had always believed. What he is naming is more precise than that. There is a difference between doing things because of someone and doing things instead of someone. When love is the source, everything that comes from it has a warmth and a quality of attention that is real. When love has gradually been displaced from the center, the same activities continue, but they are generated by something different now. Habit, responsibility, the desire to keep a good record. None of those are evil, but they are not the same thing as love. And the person on the receiving end can feel the difference, even when they cannot name it. The woman in the back row felt the difference. She felt it in the room. She felt it in herself. She has been faithful for 20 years. And somewhere in those 20 years, without deciding to, without any single morning that felt different from the one before, the love and the faithfulness stopped drawing from the same source. Return, the letter says. Remember, repent. Not manufacture a feeling you no longer have. Return your attention to the one who was the source of the feeling in the first place. The early prayers that felt like conversations rather than reports. The early reading that felt like discovery rather than maintenance. The early moments in community that felt like encounter rather than attendance. Come back to what you did at first. The promise at the end of the letter reaches all the way back to the beginning of everything. I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. The tree that stood in Eden before the gate was closed. The promise to the overcomer in Ephesus is the reversal of that original closing. What was shut will be opened. The one who returns to the first love will find, at the end, not a closed gate with a turning blade, but a tree whose fruit does not end. Later, after the gathering where the letter was read, the woman stays in the room until everyone else has left. The lamp in the corner has burned out entirely now. The room is dimmer than it should be. She sits in the near dark and lets herself name what she has been feeling for longer than she can precisely say. And she remembers what the room felt like the first time she found her way to it. The door was different then. So was the light. She is not sure she can find her way back to that. But naming the distance is the beginning of turning toward it. Outside, the harbor is busy. The ships are coming in with the morning tide. The marble streets are filling with the sound of sandals and commerce, and the ordinary movement of a city that does not know what just happened in a small room near the lower quarter. The road north is still. The sea is just visible through the trees. The messenger is already moving. Chapter 3. Smyrna, the letter that needed no correction. 86 years. That is what the old man counted when they offered him the exit. He stood in the center of the stadium, and the proconsul gave him the terms. Simple terms. A pinch of incense. A declaration. Caesar is Lord. Walk free and live out whatever years remained to him. He had been Bishop of Smyrna for a very long time. He had known the Apostle John. He had sat with people who had seen Jesus with their own eyes. And when the offer came, he did not deliberate for long. He said, 86 years I have served him, and he has done me no wrong. How can I blaspheme my king who saved me? He was not weighing the cost of refusing. He was counting, adding up the years of a relationship. And when the sum came clear to him, the answer came with it. His name was Polycarp. He was burned in that stadium in approximately the year 155 of the Common Era, 60 years after the letter to Smyrna was written. The account of his death survives in a document called The Martyrdom of Polycarp, one of the earliest accounts of a Christian death outside the New Testament. Scholars who have examined the manuscript traditions generally treat its core account as historically grounded, though some details vary across different versions. I begin with him and not with the history of the city, because his sentence is the most direct path into what the letter to Smyrna is about. The letter was written 60 years before his death. But the faith that held him in that stadium on that afternoon was the faith this letter was written to. The city of Smyrna was beautiful. Ancient writers described it as one of the most elegant in the Mediterranean. Wide streets, a famous harbor. It called itself the ornament of Asia. It was also, for the community of believers inside it, one of the most dangerous places on the road. Smyrna was fiercely loyal to Rome and had been among the first cities in the province to build a temple to the Emperor Augustus. Emperor worship was not fringe activity here. It was civic identity. Once a year, residents were expected to appear before the authorities, burn incense before the emperor's image, and declare that Caesar was Lord. For those who believed that sentence belonged to someone else entirely, the consequences were practical and grinding. Guild exclusion, narrowed income, a family that ate less, neighbors who had been friendly growing distant, and if someone chose to bring a formal accusation, the magistrates were waiting. Picture the market on an early morning in Smyrna, the stalls going up in the grey before full light, the sellers arranging their goods, the smell of bread from the bakery 2 stalls down. A woman sets out her vegetables. She was here yesterday and the day before, and every day for years. Most of the other sellers know her name. Some of them still greet her. Some do not anymore, not since it became known what she refused to say at the ceremony last spring. One of them spits near her sandals as he passes. Not at her, near her, just near enough. She arranges her turnips and her onions and her dried figs, and she does not look up. She has a daughter at home. She has a rent payment due at the end of the month, and she has a name she will not trade. The letter arrives for this woman and the people like her. And Jesus looks at everything the city of Smyrna can measure about their condition, the poverty, the exclusion, the slander, and he names it all without flinching. He does not say, "It is not as bad as you think." He does not suggest they are misunderstanding their own situation. He names it, and then he says something else is simultaneously true. "I know your tribulation and your poverty, but you are rich." Present tense. Not you will be rich. Not you will be rewarded when this is over. You are rich. Right now, in the middle of the poverty and the tribulation, there is a kind of wealth, genuinely yours, that the guild exclusion has not touched. Wealth that exists in a register the city of Smyrna has no instrument to measure. I want to hold this sentence carefully, because it deserves more than easy agreement. It is one thing to hear you are rich from a comfortable room. It is another thing to be the woman at the market stall whose neighbor spat near her sandals this morning, and to receive this word. What the letter is doing is not minimizing the poverty. It is refusing to let the poverty be the final word on what is actually true. The ledger the city of Smyrna is using to evaluate this woman is missing most of the entries. The books are not complete. And then, do not fear what you are about to suffer. Behold, the devil will throw some of you into prison, that you may be tested, and for 10 days you will have tribulation. Be faithful unto death, and I will give you the crown of life. More suffering is coming. Jesus does not announce relief. He says, do not fear, which means he knows there is something to fear. The command makes no sense otherwise. The phrase 10 days carries the weight of a biblical pattern. In the book of Daniel, Daniel and his companions underwent a 10-day test of faithfulness. In Job, the adversary is said to have tested Job 10 times. In this tradition, 10 does not primarily mean short. It means a testing period that is real and complete and purposeful, with a boundary the one who allowed it already knows. The testing is not open-ended. It has edges. And the promise, the one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. The second death, described later in Revelation, is the permanent separation from God. The first death is the death of the body. The promise to Smyrna is that the second death has no claim on them. Whatever the first death can reach, it cannot reach what the body was always pointing toward. 86 years. Polycarp stood in the stadium and added them up. He was right to count them the way he did. The letter to Smyrna says so. The market in the city that called itself the ornament of Asia is quiet now. The woman has packed up what she did not sell. She walks home in the late afternoon, basket over one arm, the day sitting on her shoulders the way it does. She is not thinking about theology. She is thinking about whether the bread at home will stretch to tomorrow, but she carries something in her that the city cannot weigh and has not touched. The road goes north. The stars are beginning to show in the east, above the sea. The next city sits high on its hill, with an altar at the top that can be seen for miles. Chapter 4. Pergamum, the letter from the city that looked down on everything. A man walks up the hill at evening. Not the long hill, the one that leads to the Acropolis with its temples and its famous altar. Just the hill that leads from the lower market to the quarter where he lives. His arms are empty. He was supposed to bring home a joint of lamb from the butcher he has used for years, the one whose stall is beside the coppersmith and who gives credit when times are thin. But the butcher's stall was busy tonight. Preparation for the feast. The altar guild would be holding their dinner at the end of the week, which meant most of the meat in the lower market was spoken for, reserved for the feast or for the households of guild members who always ate well in the days before a celebration. He is not a guild member. He was, until 2 years ago. He finds his wife at the cooking fire, and the look on his face tells her before he speaks. She nods. She turns back to the fire. They have managed before. The children eat. Bread and oil and some dried fish his wife found in the back of the storage jar. Not the meal he had hoped to bring home, but a meal. After the children are in bed, he sits outside for a while in the dark, looking up at the hill. On clear nights, he can see the lamplight from the precincts of the altar. The smoke from the sacrifices has its own smell, distinct from the cook fires of the lower city. He can hear, faintly, the sound of people eating well. He is not certain he made the right choice. He is certain he cannot make the other one. The city of Pergamum sat on a high hill in a way that was impossible to ignore. Its Acropolis was crowned with temples to Zeus, to Athena, to the emperor, and the altar of Zeus stood at the highest visible point, its smoke rising against the sky day and night. The city literally looked down on the surrounding landscape. Everything below was lower. That structure of looking down shaped how Pergamum understood itself. When Jesus addresses the church in this city, his opening words are precise and specific. I know where you dwell, where Satan's throne is. Scholars have offered 3 main explanations for that phrase. The altar of Zeus, the most visually commanding religious monument in the city. The imperial cult, which had one of its oldest established temples in Pergamum, or the temple of Asclepius, the god of healing, whose symbol was a serpent. Of those 3, the altar itself seems to me the most direct explanation. It was what anyone in Pergamum could not avoid looking at from almost anywhere in the city. It was the defining image of the city's spiritual identity. And yet, the believers there had remained faithful. Then comes the man whose name appears exactly once in the entire Bible. You did not deny my faith, even in the days of Antipas, my faithful witness, who was killed among you, where Satan dwells. One sentence. His name appears here and nowhere else. We do not know how he died. What the text tells us is that he was killed in Pergamum for his faith, and that the community continued to meet and hold fast after watching him die. Jesus calls him my faithful witness, in Greek martis, the word that gave English its word martyr, the one who witnesses with their life. And in a letter that will be read aloud to the gathered community, Jesus speaks this man's name and claims him. Think about what it would have meant to be in the room when that was read, to have known Antipas, to have prayed with him, and to hear that the Lord of the 7 churches had named him specifically as his own. There is a kind of accounting that runs parallel to history and does not appear in any record history keeps. Then the rebuke. Some in the community hold to a teaching that Jesus names using the pattern of Balaam. Balaam was the prophet who could not curse Israel directly, but eventually advised their enemies how to lead them into compromise from within. The teaching in Pergamum was telling believers they could participate in the religious feasts embedded in the city's social and commercial life without genuine spiritual harm. That God understood the necessity, that what mattered was the heart, not the external act. The man who sat outside his house listening to the sounds of the feast from the upper hill had refused that argument, not because he had answered it completely, but because something in him knew that the direction it pointed was the wrong direction, even when he could not always say exactly why. He gets up from the stone step when the air grows cold. He goes inside. The lamp in the room is low. His wife is already asleep. He lies down in the dark and listens to his children breathe. He does not know that a letter is coming with a promise for people like him. Hidden manna. Bread from a different source, received fresh, not reserved for guild members. And a white stone with a name on it known only to the one who receives it. A name that lives in a conversation between the giver and the receiver that no one else is party to. The city above him is still lit. The smell of the altar smoke drifts down even now. In the dark of his house, in the silence of his ordinary faithfulness, someone knows his name. The road turns southeast. The valley opens ahead. Thyatira is ahead, flat and working and full of smoke from the dye vats. Let the man on the stone step rest. Let the lamp burn low. Chapter 5. Thyatira, the longest letter, the most ordinary struggle. He comes home at dusk. His hands are the color of bruises. The madder root dye has worked its way past his gloves and into the creases of his knuckles, the lines of his palms, the half-moons beneath his fingernails. He has been in the vat since before the sun was fully up. His back aches in the particular way it does when he has been lifting and stirring for too many hours. His clothes carry the smell of the work, the sharp, sweet rot of the dyeing process that no amount of washing ever quite removes. He sets his tools inside the door. His daughter is in the corner of the main room, sorting beans into a clay bowl, one by one, picking out the bad ones and setting them aside. She is 7 years old and takes this task very seriously. She does not look up when he comes in. Then she does. "Father, you did not go to the feast." It is not a question. She heard from a neighbor's child that the guild dinner was tonight at the temple. She has a child's understanding of what that means, which is to say she understands more than he sometimes gives her credit for. He washes his hands at the basin by the door. The water turns the color of weak wine. He watches it drain. "No," he says. "I did not go." She goes back to the beans. One by one. Good ones on the left. Bad ones on the right. His wife comes from the back of the house. She has been cooking. There is not much. Lentil soup. Bread from yesterday that she has warmed near the fire. Some onions from the garden behind the house. It is not the table the guild men are sitting at tonight. The long table at the temple with the wine and the roasted meat and the laughter that carries down the street. She sets the bowl down. She does not look at him with pity, which he is grateful for. She looks at him the way she always has, which is to say directly and without drama. They eat. Outside, at some point during the meal, a group of guild men pass on the street. He can tell by the sound of them, the particular looseness of voices after wine, the way feet find the ground when a feast is behind you. The sound rises and then fades. The room is quiet after that. Just the scrape of spoon on clay. Just his daughter asking if she can have the last of the bread. Just the fire going lower in the corner. This is Thyatira. It was the smallest of the 7 cities on the postal road. No famous temple on a hilltop. No legendary founding story. a working town in a flat valley built around the guilds that organized its trades. Wool workers, linen workers, bronze smiths, tanners, and the dyers like this man who made the distinctive purple cloth traded across the empire. And Thyatira receives the longest letter of the seven. Not Ephesus with its apostolic founders, not Pergamum with its political weight. Thyatira, the modest working town. The length of the letter is not proportional to the prestige of the city. It is proportional to the complexity of what the community inside it was navigating. To work in Thyatira, you needed to belong to a guild. The guilds controlled the supply networks, the market relationships, the professional connections that made a craftsman's livelihood possible. And the guilds held regular communal meals at which the food was formally offered to the patron deity of the trade before it was eaten. These meals were not optional social events. They were the occasions when the business relationships were built and maintained. For a believer, the dilemma was not theoretical. It showed up at the end of a working day in the choice of where to go for dinner and what it would cost to go there or not. Into this pressure came a voice offering a solution. Jesus refers to the person by the symbolic name Jezebel, drawn from the queen of the Old Testament who led Israel into religious compromise. By using that name, Jesus is identifying a pattern rather than simply a person. Someone in this community, speaking with claimed spiritual authority, was presenting theological freedom as the reason to attend the guild feast. If an idol is nothing, the argument went, then food offered to nothing is just food. A believer who truly understands God's nature should be able to sit at any table without being contaminated. The argument had a coherent shape, and many in the community had accepted it, because accepting it made everything easier. It kept the order books full. It kept the professional relationships intact. It kept the family table better stocked. The man who came home with empty hands tonight had not accepted it. He is not entirely sure he can articulate why. He knows that every time he thinks about going, something in him says no. Not a loud no, a quiet one. The kind that comes from somewhere below the level of argument, from something that knows before the reasoning has finished. He has held that no for 3 years now. It has cost him. The letter commends the community broadly. They are growing in love, growing in service, doing more good now than when they started. And then it names the specific thing that has been tolerated, a teaching that was slowly redefining what faithfulness was allowed to include. The community had not challenged it, partly because they were a warm and loving community, and warm and loving communities find confrontation difficult. Partly because the accommodation made practical sense, and partly because the teacher presented herself as spiritually sophisticated, which made disagreement feel like spiritual immaturity. To those in the community who had refused the teaching, who had sat at quieter tables with less on them, the letter says simply, "I do not lay on you any other burden. Only hold fast what you have until I come. Hold fast what you have. Not add more, not prove more. Just keep holding what you have held." And the promise to the overcomer is the most intimate of the seven. Not a thing Jesus gives, the morning star. And the morning star, as Revelation tells us in its final chapter, is Jesus himself. The promise to the dyers and the weavers and the craftsmen of Thyatira is the person of the promiser. The house is quiet now. The daughter is asleep. His wife has banked the fire and gone to bed. He sits for a moment more in the near dark, his hands still faintly stained despite the washing. Through the small window near the door he can see a piece of the sky. One star, very bright, still visible near the horizon before the full dark takes it. He watches it until it is gone. He does not know it has a name. He does not know the name is his. He goes inside. The fire is coals now. The room holds the warmth of the evening meal and the breathing of sleeping children. It is enough. Outside, the night has fully come to Thyatira. The guild men are home. The temple lamps are burning lower. The dye vats are still until morning, and somewhere above the valley, before the sun returns, a star rises. Patient with the dark, waiting for the hand whose name it carries. The road climbs now. The flat valley of Thyatira falls behind. The city ahead sits on a famous hill, the kind of hill a city trusts with its life. It was wrong to trust it, but not all of them were sleeping. Chapter 6. Sardis, the city that did not check the cliff. There is a man on the wall tonight who should not be sleeping. He is one of the sentries posted along the northern stretch of the Sardis Acropolis, the section of wall that runs above the cliff face to the west. His post is technically on the walkway, which means he is technically on duty. But the walkway is wide, and the cliff below it is so steep, such a mess of crumbling schist rock that falls apart in your hands when you try to grip it, that no commander has ever bothered to emphasize this particular stretch as a priority. The obvious approaches are the southern gate and the eastern path, where the slope is manageable. This stretch of wall above the unclimbable cliff has been quiet for as long as anyone can remember. He leans against the stone. His eyes are heavy. The city behind him is dark and settled, making the particular breathing sound that large things make when they are deeply asleep. The night air is cold at this elevation. He is not thinking about the cliff below him. He has never thought about the cliff below him. He is thinking about nothing because his eyes have closed. Somewhere in the dark below the wall, on a night in 547 before the Common Era, a Persian soldier named Hierodiades finds the path. He had been watching for it. He had seen a Lydian soldier drop his helmet from the battlements in the afternoon and then climb down to retrieve it, using handholds in the crumbling schist that were not obvious from the base, but were there if you knew where to look. He had watched the whole thing, that slow, careful descent and the equally slow ascent back up, and he had thought, there is a path. The cliff that everyone agrees is unclimbable has a path. He leads a small group up in the dark. Their hands find the same holds the helmet-fetching soldier found. Their feet find the same narrow ledges. The rock crumbles at the edges but holds at the core. Slowly, in silence, they rise. They reach the walkway. They step over the sleeping sentry. They walk into the city. Sardis falls that night, not because its walls were breached or its gates were forced, but because the people inside had trusted in something they had long since stopped verifying. 2 centuries later, in 214 before the Common Era, the general Lagarus does the same thing. Same cliff, same unguarded stretch, same sleeping city, same fall. This is the story the people of Sardis grew up with. Both falls, both sleeping sentries, both unclimbable cliffs that turned out to have paths. When the letter arrives for the church in Sardis, and the reader gets to the words, "I will come like a thief, and you will not know at what time I will come to you," everyone in the room knows exactly what shape that warning takes in Sardis. They know what it looks like when something believed to be safe turns out not to have been checked. The letter opens without a commendation. Of the 7 letters, only this one and the letter to Laodicea begin without any credit. No list of things the community has done well. Just the words of Jesus, direct and unsparing. "I know your works. You have a name of being alive, and you are dead." The word for name here is the same word used for reputation, for the identity a community is known by in the surrounding world. The church in Sardis had a reputation. People in the region knew about this community and described it as alive and active. The reputation was real. People genuinely perceived this church as a living congregation. But Jesus, who holds the 7 spirits of God and the 7 stars, sees something different underneath. And here is where the easy reading goes wrong. It would be simple to conclude that the Sardis community was full of deliberate hypocrites. But I do not think that is what the letter names. The people there almost certainly believed they were faithful. They were gathering. They were using the language of faith. They were doing the things communities of faith do. The more precise diagnosis comes in the next sentence. Wake up and strengthen what remains and is about to die, for I have not found your works complete in the sight of my God. Something remains. Some genuine life is still in Sardis, but it is diminishing. If the direction does not change, it will go all the way out. And the works are described not as absent, but as not complete, not brought to the fullness they were meant to reach. The works are happening, but they are happening at a level that does not reach the depth they were supposed to reach, drawn from a source they have gradually stopped tending. This is the unguarded cliff, not a dramatic failure, not a conscious abandonment. The slow accumulation of days in which no one checked the stretch of wall that everyone assumed was fine. Remember, then, what you received and heard. Keep it and repent. Remember the content. The gospel that was originally proclaimed to this community, the truth that once generated everything they did. Somewhere between receiving it and now, the message had shifted from being the daily source to being the historical origin. They remembered that they had received it, rather than continuing to receive it. And there is a distance between those two things that does not announce itself when it first opens. Now the part of the letter I find most quietly moving. Yet you have still a few names in Sardis, people who have not soiled their garments, and they will walk with me in white, for they are worthy. A few names, not a movement, not a faction. A few people, unnamed to us, identified by only this. They have kept what they were given. In a community where the majority has drifted, these few have not drifted. They are not described as doing anything heroic or publicly notable. They have simply held on to the thing the community around them has let slide. And Jesus knows their names. Picture one of them. An older woman, perhaps, who has been part of this community since before most of the current members were born. She remembers what the early days felt like. She has watched the community change, the way the warmth became a schedule, the way the schedule became a reputation, the way the reputation became the thing people mentioned when they spoke about this community to people who were not in it. She has not stopped checking the cliff. She does not know anyone notices. She does not do it for an audience. She just keeps coming back to the source, in the private early hours, in the reading that still feels like discovery, in the prayer that is still a conversation rather than a report. She is wearing out a little. The years are long. It would be easier to simply flow with the community's current instead of swimming against it. She does not stop. And her name, along with the names of the others like her, is kept in a place the reputation of Sardis cannot reach. The promise to the overcomer is threefold. White garments, a name not struck from the book of life, a name spoken aloud by Jesus before his Father and before the angels. The white garment is the clothing of honor. The book of life is the record that outlasts every earthly role of citizens and notable residents. And the name spoken before the Father is the name spoken in the register where what is spoken lasts. The city of Sardis is famous in the ancient record. Croesus is famous. The temple of Artemis in the lower city, its columns still standing today as ruins you can visit, is notable enough for the travel writers of the ancient world to mention. The two falls of the city, both by climbed cliffs and sleeping sentries, are in the histories. The few names in Sardis are not in any history, but they are kept somewhere. The sentry on the wall shifts in his sleep. The cliff below him holds its silence. Inside the city, a few lamps are still burning, and what remains is worth strengthening. The road continues southeast. Philadelphia is not far now, in a valley where the ground has its own memory. Let the city of Sardis settle into the dark. Let the cliff stand quiet. Chapter 7. Philadelphia. The letter for the one who is almost run out. In the year 17 of the Common Era, a major earthquake struck the Lycus River Valley and the region around it. The historian Strabo, writing near that time, described the damage. But it was what came after the earthquake that shaped Philadelphia most deeply. The aftershocks continued, not for days, not for weeks. The shaking returned across years, periodic tremors arriving without warning, each one reopening the question of whether the walls would hold. Ancient sources describe the residents repeatedly leaving the city in the aftermath of each new shock, camping in fields outside the walls, sleeping under the sky because the structures inside could not be trusted. They would return when things seemed quiet. They would leave again when the ground moved. Think about what it does to a person to live that way for years, to wake up each morning and calculate, before anything else, whether today is a day the ground will hold. To look at the walls of your home and know that they are not guaranteed. To have learned, through repeated experience, that the things which look permanent from the outside can come down. The city was rebuilt. The Emperor Tiberius contributed funds, and the citizens briefly renamed their city in honor of him. But the memory does not rebuild when the walls do. The memory of sleeping outside your own home because you did not trust your floor, that memory stays. This is the community the letter is addressed to. She has been awake since before dawn. She lies on her mat in the room where her family sleeps and listens to the night. The room is quiet. Her husband breathes steadily beside her. Her children are still. The house is still. She is listening for the sound she has heard before. The low groan that comes from deep in the ground just before the earth decides to move. The sound that tells you to get up, to get the children, to get outside. The sound is not there tonight. The ground is quiet. But she is awake anyway, because the ground has been quiet before and then not been quiet, and she has stopped, fully trusting the silence. She has been part of the community here for a long time. She goes to the gathering each week. She brings what she has. She has kept the name she confesses, even when there have been people in this city who said things about her community that were not true and that led to difficulty. She has little by way of influence or position. The community she belongs to is not large. They are not well connected. They do not have the resources of the community in Ephesus or the history of the community in Pergamum. She just keeps showing up. The letter, when it arrives, begins not with a list of what the community has done right or wrong, but with something else, an identification of who is writing. These are the words of him who is holy and true, who holds the key of David. What he opens, no one can shut, and what he shuts, no one can open. He begins with the keys. The key of David comes from a passage in Isaiah chapter 22 about a man named Eliakim who was given absolute authority over access to the royal household. The holder of the key decided who entered and who did not. No appeal went around him. No force circumvented him. Jesus opens this letter to a community in a shaking valley by naming himself as the one who holds that key. Before any commendation, before any promise, before any instruction, he establishes what is completely stable in a world that has proven to these specific people that almost nothing holds still. The key is held, and what those hands have opened, no tremor in the valley can close. Then the letter. I know your works. Behold, I have set before you an open door which no one is able to shut. I know that you have but little power, and yet you have kept my word and have not denied my name. Little power. He does not say this apologetically. He does not soften it. He names it accurately. Small strength. And then, without pause, he names what was done with it. You have kept my word. You have not denied my name. The small strength was sufficient for the keeping, and the keeping is what is being commended. The woman on the mat in the dark house has little power. She is not prominent. She is not celebrated. She is tired from years of waking up before dawn and listening for the sound in the ground. And what she has done with the small strength she has is enough. The open door. Philadelphia sat on the road connecting the coastal cities to the interior of Asia Minor, a city through which things passed on their way somewhere else. The image of a door set open before this community carries more than one meaning simultaneously. Opportunity for the message to move, and for a community that knows what it means to be displaced from their own walls, the assurance of passage that does not depend on favorable conditions. The door is set open by the one who holds the key, and nothing in the valley can force it closed. The promise to the overcomer has been shaped precisely for people who know what it means when structures fall. I will make him a pillar in the temple of my God. Never shall he go out of it. A pillar in a building that does not shake, made of materials that do not crumble. And then the phrase that carries everything for the woman who has spent years sleeping outside her own walls. Never shall he go out of it. You have been driven out before. You have woken up and gathered your children and gone outside because you could not trust what was inside. You have slept under the open sky while the walls decided whether they were going to hold. You will never be driven out of this again. And 3 names written on the pillar: the name of God, the name of the New Jerusalem, the new name of Jesus himself. 3 layers of belonging inscribed on a permanent structure in a building built from the other side of the earthquake. You are God's. You belong to the city coming from heaven. You bear the mark of the one who holds the key. The woman in the dark house finally lets her eyes close. The ground is still. The walls have held tonight. Her children are breathing. She does not know she will become a pillar. She does not know her name is held in a place that the valley cannot shake. She only knows she is tired and that the letter said she was seen. That person may hear this letter more deeply than most tonight. Never shall he go out of it. The road turns south. The night is deep. Philadelphia recedes. The valley grows quieter behind us. Ahead, the road descends toward a prosperous city with full tables and good walls and water that arrives at exactly the wrong temperature. Let the woman on her mat sleep. Let the walls hold tonight. You do not have to go out. Chapter 8. Laodicea. The letter to the church that did not know the door was closed. There is a room in Laodicea. It is a good room. Not extravagant, not by the standards of the city, but comfortable in the particular way that a room becomes comfortable over years of ordinary evenings. The floor has been swept. The lamp is good quality, not the kind that smokes. There is a low table with food on it that is better than most people in most cities would eat tonight. Bread that was baked this morning, a clay dish of olives, some dried figs, a small jug of local wine. The people in the room have eaten. They are content. The conversation has been warm, the way conversation gets when no one is particularly troubled, and the table has been well supplied. There is laughter at intervals. There are the sounds of people who are comfortable with each other. They are a community of believers. They gather weekly. They read the scriptures together. They pray together. They care about each other in the genuine and practical ways that communities care, with attention and food and the checking in that happens when you know someone is going through a difficult season. By any visible measure, this is a healthy gathering in a prosperous city. Now I want to tell you about the water. Laodicea had no significant natural water source nearby. Unlike Colossae, a few miles away with its cold mountain springs, or Hierapolis nearby with its genuinely hot thermal activity, Laodicea was simply not near water that arrived easily or naturally. The city solved this problem through an aqueduct that brought water in from the hot springs at Hierapolis through a pressurized stone pipeline. The excavation of the ancient site has found pieces of this pipe. The mineral deposits in the stone confirm what the ancient sources describe. The water that arrived in Laodicea had traveled far enough from its hot source to cool considerably, but not far enough or through enough to become genuinely cold. It arrived tepid, unpleasant to drink untreated. The kind of water you consumed because you needed water, not because it gave you anything beyond the minimum. The people of Laodicea drank this water every day of their lives. They knew its taste the way you know the taste of your own kitchen. When Jesus says to the church in this city, "You are neither cold nor hot," I wish you were either cold or hot. So, because you are lukewarm, neither hot nor cold, I will spit you out of my mouth. He is reaching for an image that everyone in the room recognized from their own cup. Your faith has become the water of this city. Now, let me describe what this meant, because the city matters for hearing the diagnosis correctly. Laodicea was prosperous in the way of a genuine financial hub. Its commercial activity was significant enough that the Roman orator Cicero described cashing drafts on Laodicea as standard practice for travelers in the Eastern Empire. When a major earthquake struck the region in the year 60 of the Common Era, Laodicea declined imperial assistance and rebuilt entirely from its own resources. A city that can do that has reserves. It was also known for a distinctive glossy black wool produced by local sheep and traded across the empire, and for a medical school whose eye remedy was distributed and used throughout the region. Banking, black wool, eye salve. When Jesus speaks to the church and says, "I counsel you to buy from me gold refined by fire, so that you may be rich, and white garments, so that you may clothe yourself, and salve to anoint your eyes, so that you may see," he is inverting, one by one, exactly the three things the city was most proud of. They had financial capital and were spiritually bankrupt. They had luxury black wool and were spiritually exposed. They had a remedy for eyes and could not see their own condition. The specific, industry-by-industry precision of that inversion is not general rhetoric. It is a letter addressed to a specific city, written with exact knowledge of what this city was and what the church inside it had gradually become. And the key word in the diagnosis is two words: not realizing. You say, "I am rich, I have prospered, and I need nothing," not realizing that you are wretched, pitiable, poor, blind, and naked. Not realizing. If you had walked into the room I described at the start of this chapter and asked any person there whether they were committed to their faith, they would have said yes. If you had asked whether their community was healthy, they would have said yes. Nothing felt acutely wrong. The gathering was happening. The food was good. The conversation was warm. The city around them was comfortable, and comfort, as it always does, felt like evidence that things were going well. The tepid water in the cup does not taste wrong to someone who has only ever drunk tepid water. It has always been this temperature. This is just how water is here. What has happened to the church in Laodicea is not dramatic or sudden. It is the slow result of a community that has been too long shaped by its surrounding environment. Not deliberately, not with intention, but over time, the faith has absorbed the temperature of the room rather than maintaining its own. The gathering continues. The language of faith continues. The warmth of human fellowship continues. But something that was supposed to be generating something distinct from the comfort of Laodicea has instead become a reflection of it. And in the comfortable room, with the good lamp and the food that is better than most people's, with the laughter at intervals and the genuine care for one another, no one can feel the difference. Because the tepid water is simply the water they have always had. Then comes the most remarkable sentence in all 7 letters. He is outside. Not outside a city that has rejected the faith, not outside a community that is hostile to the name of Jesus. Outside a community that is gathered in his name, using his language, meeting in his memory. He is on the other side of the door. "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hears my voice and opens the door, I will come into him and eat with him, and he with me." Knocking. He is not forcing his way in. He is not demanding entry. He is knocking, which is the gesture of one who waits to be admitted. And he is calling, which is the gesture of one who has not given up. The people in the comfortable room are talking and laughing. The lamp is good quality. The food is better than most. The conversations are warm. And outside the door, there is a knock. Quiet enough that you might miss it if you were not listening. Not loud. Not angry. Patient. Anyone. The promise is to anyone who hears and opens. Not the whole community deciding together. One person in the room who hears the sound at the door and gets up and goes to it. The meal that follows is the promise of full presence. Not a visit. Not a formal call. A meal. To eat with someone in the ancient world was to be with them in the unhurried sense, to share the time it takes to break bread and finish it, to stay in each other's space through the whole of it. The promise to the one who opens the door is that Jesus will come in and stay. Share the table. Be present in the full and unhurried sense a meal creates. And the promise to the overcomer is the largest of the 7, to sit with him on his throne, the largest gift given to the community that seems least ready for it. This asymmetry is the shape of grace, not proportioned to what they brought, not calibrated to their prior level of spiritual engagement, available to anyone who hears the knock and gets up. The room is warm and well lit. The food on the table is good. The lamp is burning steadily. And outside the door, in the street of Laodicea, a figure stands in the dark, holding a lamp of his own, still knocking, still calling, waiting for the sound of a latch lifted from the inside.
Chapter 9. 7 Promises. What the road was always carrying. The messenger has finished his circuit. 7 scrolls delivered. 7 doors. 7 communities of ordinary people in 7 ordinary cities, trying to hold something worth holding in a world that kept offering them easier things to carry instead. And in each letter, at the end, a promise. One for each overcomer. One for the person who, in their specific city and their specific condition, kept going. I want to bring those 7 promises together now, not to list them but to walk them slowly, because when you see them side by side, they make a shape that is not visible when you read them one at a time. They go somewhere. The first promise was to Ephesus. The woman in the back row sat in her seat after everyone else had left, in the room that smelled of lamp oil and old wool, and the letter was still settling into her. The promise was for her. To the one who conquers, I will grant to eat of the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. The tree of life. In the 2nd chapter of the book of Genesis, it stood at the center of the first garden. After the choice that changed everything, cherubim and a flaming sword were placed at the entrance of the garden to guard the way to it. The tree became the thing that could not be reached, the life that had been forfeited. The first promise to the first church, in the first letter, is the promise that the way back to that tree is open, that the cherubim and the sword are not the final word, that the one who returns to the first love will find at the end not a closed gate and a turning blade, but a tree bearing fruit that never ends. The promises begin at the very beginning of everything, at the garden, at the first image of life in the presence of God. The second promise was to Smyrna, the woman at the market stall in the city that called itself the ornament of Asia, the one whose neighbor spat near her sandals, the one who arranged her onions and her dried figs and did not look up, the one who has a rent payment due and a daughter at home and a name she will not trade. The one who conquers will not be hurt by the second death. The second death is the permanent separation from God. The first death is the death of the body. The promise is that whatever the first death can reach, it cannot reach what the body was always pointing toward. Polycarp stood in that stadium and counted 86 years and decided they were worth more than his life. The promise to Smyrna says he was right to count them that way. The third promise was to Pergamum, the man who came home with empty hands because the butcher's stall was taken up with preparation for the guild feast, the one who lay in the dark and listened to his children breathe. Hidden manna. and a white stone with a new name known only to the one who receives it. The manna that had to be received fresh each morning, that could not be stored or traded, that came from the hand that gave it. The sustenance available to the one who refused the guild feast. And the white stone with the private name. A name that lives in a conversation between the giver and the receiver that no one else is party to. A name that knows something true about who that person is in a register. The city of Pergamum has no instrument to measure. The fourth promise was to Thyatira, the dyer who came home at dusk and washed his purple hands at the basin while his daughter sorted beans in the corner. The one who heard the guild men passing outside, voices loose after the feast, and sat at his quieter table and said nothing about it. The morning star. And the morning star, as the final chapter of Revelation tells us, is Jesus himself. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star. Not a thing Jesus gives. Himself. The person of the promiser, given to a man with stained hands sitting in a quiet house while the sound of the feast faded down the street. The fifth promise was to Sardis, the older woman who kept coming back to the source, who kept checking the cliff, who did not stop when the community around her made stopping look easy. White garments, a name not struck from the book of life, and a name confessed before the Father and the angels. The white garment covers what the years of drift have left. The book holds what no city roll keeps. And the name spoken by Jesus before his Father is spoken in the register where what is spoken lasts. The few names in Sardis, unknown to history, spoken in the place where the naming matters most. The sixth promise was to Philadelphia, the woman lying awake before dawn, listening for the sound in the ground, in a city that has shaken before and may shake again. The one with small strength who has kept the word and not denied the name. A pillar in the temple of my God, and never shall he go out of it. Permanent, immovable, in a building that does not shake. 3 names inscribed on it, and the phrase that holds everything for someone who has slept outside their own walls. Never shall he go out of it. You have been driven out before. You will never be driven out of this. The 7th promise was to Laodicea, the person in the comfortable room who heard, at some point during the evening, a sound at the door that the other people in the room did not seem to notice, who got up from the table quietly and went to the door and opened it, to sit with me on my throne. The largest promise, given to the community that seems least ready to receive it, given to the people who perhaps, after the letter was read aloud in that comfortable room, sat in the silence that followed, and then slowly rose and walked to the door. Now stand back and see where the 7 promises travel. They begin at the tree of life, the garden, the first image of life in the presence of God, before the human story became the story of living east of it. They end on the throne, the seat of all authority, the center from which everything is sustained and governed. From the garden to the throne, from the first image of life to the fullness of shared authority, from what was lost at the very beginning to what is offered at the completion of everything. The arc of the 7 promises is the arc of the whole story. Creation, loss, the long journey back toward what was lost, and finally, not just the restoration of what was lost, but something larger. The garden was given. The throne is shared. The word that appears in every promise is the same word. The one who conquers, Nikao in the Greek, to overcome, to be at the end of the race, the one who finished it. And the one who conquers is not the one who never fell, not the one who performed without failure, not the one who always felt strong enough, the one who, in their specific city, kept going. The woman in Ephesus, who finally named what she had been setting aside for months. The woman in Smyrna who arranged her onions and did not look up. The man in Pergamum who came home with empty hands. The dyer in Thyatira who listened to the feast go past in the dark. The woman in Sardis who kept checking the cliff when everyone else had stopped. The woman in Philadelphia who lay awake before dawn listening for a sound that did not come tonight. The person in Laodicea who heard the knock. 7 ordinary people in 7 ordinary cities. The kind of people history does not record and monuments are not built for. The kind of people who do the difficult ordinary thing over a long time without any particular audience. To them, all 7 promises. The full arc from garden to throne. You are somewhere on that arc tonight. Not at the beginning of it. Not yet at the end. Somewhere in the middle, in a room the size of your life, with the particular weight of your particular day, still somewhere in the room with you. The 7 cities have been dust for nearly 2,000 years. The communities that received those letters are gone from every earthly record. But the one who sent the letters is the same tonight as he was then. Still walking among the lampstands. Still seeing what is actually there rather than what the reputation says. Still knowing the few names in Sardis. Still seeing the woman in Ephesus who stayed in her seat after everyone else left. Still standing outside the door in Laodicea with a lamp. He sees you. Not the name you give yourself. Not the condition you would present if you had the choice. The actual thing. The real state of the lamp. The real quality of the ground you are standing on. And what he does with what he sees is not first judgment. It is a letter. Addressed. Carried on a road that goes everywhere. The circuit is complete. The 7 cities are quiet. The lamps in the windows are burning low. The road that began at Ephesus has come to the end of its loop. Somewhere the messenger rests his feet for the first time in weeks. His satchel is empty. Every scroll has been delivered. Let the road go quiet. Let the 7 cities settle into their night. And let this room you are in right now, this ordinary room, at the end of your ordinary day, be the place where the last letter was read. It has been. Whatever it was you needed to hear, it has been said. The tree is still there. The throne is still there. The door, wherever it is in your life tonight, is the same door. And the one who stands before it has not looked away. Not one. Not ever. Not yours. Sleep well, beloved. The lamp is low. The letter has been read. And the one who sent it has not looked away.